Captain Jinwoo Kim wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the scanner readings. 3 months they'd been working these dead systems, and all they had to show for it was a cargo hold, half full of scrap metal and some outdated navigation, computers. The fuel costs alone were eating into their profits faster than a black hole swallows light. "Captain, you need to see this," Hyejin called from her station, her voice cutting through the hum of the ship's engines. The young woman had been with their salvage crew for 2 years now, and Jinwoo had learned to trust her instincts about these things. He floated over to her workstation, using the handholds welded to the walls of their cramped bridge. Bore. Hopes. Ton wasn't much to look at, a converted mining vessel with mismatched hull plates and jury-rigged systems, but she was theirs, and she kept them alive in the cold void between stars. "What have you got?" Jinwoo asked, peering over Heejin's shoulder at the sensor display. The screen showed a 3-dimensional map of the debris field they were currently working, dots of various colors representing different types of wreckage. There, she pointed to a large red signature near the edge of their scanning range. "That's not just debris. Look at the power readings." Jinwoo felt his breath catch. The signature was massive, easily 10 times the size of their own ship, and according to the sensors, it still had active power sources running through its hull. In their line of work, finding anything with working systems was like striking gold. "Min-ho," he called to their translator and communications specialist. "Get over here and help us figure out what we're looking at." Min-ho Lee pushed off from his own station and drifted over, his tablet already in hand. The young man had a gift for languages that had saved their crew more than once when dealing with alien technology. "Running it through the database now," he said, fingers dancing across his screen. The 3 of them watched as the computer processed the scan data, cross-referencing hull configurations and energy signatures against known ship designs. When the results came back, Jinwoo felt his stomach drop. "Thrakari," Min-ho whispered, his face pale. "It's a Thrakari battlecruiser." Everyone on the bridge went quiet. The Thrakari Empire was known throughout the galaxy for 2 things: their incredible military technology and their absolutely ruthless warrior culture. Most salvage crews would have marked the location and sold the information to someone with bigger guns and smaller brains. "Any signs of life?" Jinwoo asked, though he wasn't sure what answer he was hoping for. Yejin adjusted her sensors, focusing the scan on the alien vessel. For a long moment, the only sound was the electronic chirping of their equipment. Then her eyes widened. "Captain, I'm reading a single life sign. It's weak, but it's there." Dr. So Young Choi looked up from her medical station where she'd been cataloging their supply of medicines. "How weak?" she asked. The ship's doctor was also their biologist, and she'd studied enough alien physiology to know that weak could mean a lot of different things. "Barely registering," Hyejin replied. "Whatever's over there is in bad shape." Jinwoo stared at the display, his mind racing. Protocol said they should report the find to the authorities and claim a finder's fee. But protocol also said a lot of things that didn't match reality when you were trying to make a living in the outer systems. "Hyunsu," he called to their engineer, who was currently wedged inside an access panel trying to coax more power out of their aging reactor. "How long would it take to dock with that ship?" "Depends on how much of it's still intact," came the muffled reply. "Could be 20 minutes, could be 2 hours if we have to cut our way in." Jinwoo made his decision. "Change course. We're going to take a look." "Captain," Min-ho said carefully, "Thrakari ships are usually booby-trapped. And if there's a survivor, then someone needs help," Jinwoo finished. "That's what we do, isn't it? We find things that are lost and give them a second chance." As the Hope's Dawn changed course toward the alien battlecruiser, Jinwoo couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to find something that would change everything. The Thrakari were legendary warriors, fighters who would rather die than show weakness. What could have happened to leave one of them stranded and dying in the wreckage of their own ship? The alien vessel grew larger on their screens as they approached, its hull scarred by weapons fire and micrometeor impacts. It was a thing of brutal beauty, designed for war and nothing else. Whatever battle had happened here, it had been fierce enough to cripple one of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Life signs are getting stronger, Hyejin reported. Whatever's in there, it knows we're coming. The airlock hissed as Jinwoo and his team stepped aboard the Thrakari battlecruiser. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the metallic smell of blood and the ozone scent of damaged electronics. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down corridors that seemed built for giants. This way, Hyejin whispered, checking her scanner. Life signs are coming from the medical bay 3 levels down. They moved carefully through the ship, their magnetic boots clanking against the metal floors. The walls were covered in what looked like claw marks, deep gouges that spoke of desperate fighting. Jinwoo tried not to think about what could have made marks that size. When they found him, the Thrakari warrior was barely conscious. He lay crumpled in a corner of what had once been the ship's medical facility, his massive form taking up half the room. Even dying, he was terrifying. 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms, his natural armor plating cracked and bleeding. His breathing was shallow, each breath a struggle. My God, Dr. So-Young breathed, immediately kneeling beside the alien despite the obvious danger. Look at these wounds. How is he still alive? The warrior's eyes snapped open at the sound of her voice. They were deep gold like molten metal and filled with pain and confusion. He tried to move to defend himself, but his body wouldn't respond. Easy, Jinwoo said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. We're here to help. Minho activated his translation device, and after a moment of electronic processing, the alien's voice came through as a low rumble. Kill me, he said simply. It is the honorable thing. Dr. So-Young looked shocked. Kill you? You need medical attention. I am Corvin, the warrior continued, his voice growing weaker. I am defeated. I am broken. In my culture, the broken do not deserve to live. Well, you're not in your culture anymore, So-Young said firmly, pulling out her medical scanner. You're with humans now, and humans don't give up on people. For the next hour, they worked to stabilize Corvin enough to move him. It wasn't easy. His alien physiology was completely different from anything So-Young had studied. His blood was blue-green, his heart had 6 chambers, and his nervous system seemed to run on electrical impulses 3 times stronger than a human's. I don't understand, Corvin kept saying as they carefully loaded him onto a stretcher. Why do you waste resources on the weak? You're not weak, Yunsu said as he helped carry the stretcher. You're hurt. There's a difference. Back on the Hope's Dawn, they converted their largest cargo bay into a makeshift medical facility. So-Young worked around the clock, trying to understand how to heal wounds in a body that operated on completely different principles than her own. She had to jury-rig her equipment, adjust medication dosages through trial and error, and basically invent alien medicine as she went along. The rest of the crew pitched in however they could. Hyejin researched Thrakari physiology in their computer database, finding scattered bits of information from old first contact reports. Minho worked on improving the translation system so they could communicate more clearly. Hyunsu modified their life support systems to accommodate their guests' different atmospheric needs. Your people, Corvin said one day as So-Young changed his bandages. They are strange. In Thrakari space, only the strong survive. The weak are left to die so they do not burden the pack. That sounds lonely, So-Young replied, checking his vital signs. What happens when the strong get hurt? Who takes care of them? No one, Corvin said as if it were obvious. If you cannot care for yourself, you are no longer strong. So-Young shook her head. That's not strength. That's just being afraid. Afraid? The concept seemed to puzzle him. Afraid of showing weakness. Afraid of depending on others. Afraid of admitting you need help. She sat down beside his medical bed. Real strength is knowing when to ask for help and trusting others enough to give it. Over the following weeks, Corvin watched the crew with growing confusion and fascination. He saw Jinwoo make decisions not through dominance, but by listening to everyone's opinions. He watched Hyunsu share his food rations when supplies ran low. He observed Hyejin stay up extra shifts so others could rest. You make no sense, he told them one evening as they gathered for their daily meal. You help each other for no gain. You risk yourselves for strangers. By all logic, your species should have died out long ago. Maybe, Jinwoo said with a smile. But we're still here, aren't we? And so are you, because we decided your life was worth saving. I do not understand this concept of worth, Corvin admitted. You don't have to understand it, So Young said gently. You just have to let yourself experience it. Let yourself be cared for without having to earn it. As his body slowly healed, something else began to change in Corvin. For the first time in his life, he felt safe. Not because he was the strongest or the most dangerous, but because he was surrounded by people who valued him simply for being alive. It was a strange and wonderful feeling that he had no words for in his own language. The humans. He was beginning to realize had a strength his warrior culture had never even imagined. As Corvin's strength returned, he began to move around the ship more freely. The Hope's Dawn had never felt smaller. Having a 3-meter-tall alien warrior learning to navigate corridors built for humans created some interesting challenges. Hyun-Soo had to reinforce several door frames after Corvin accidentally put his shoulder through them. Sorry, Corvin would say each time, his massive form hunched apologetically. In Thrakari culture, showing remorse was considered weakness, but somehow around these humans the word came naturally. Don't worry about it, Hyun-Soo would always reply, already reaching for his welding torch. That's what repair kits are for. The casual way they brushed off his mistakes amazed Corvin. In his world, accidents meant punishment. Mistakes meant shame. Here they were just part of life. He began to study the crew more carefully, trying to understand what made them so different from his own people. During their daily work routines, he watched Jinwoo coordinate salvage operations not by barking orders but by asking questions. What do you think, Hae-jin? Is that debris worth investigating? Minho, how's our fuel situation? Can we afford to check that outer sector? So Young, how are our medical supplies holding up? It was backwards. From everything Corvin knew about leadership, a Thrakari commander would assess the situation, make a decision, and expect instant obedience. But Jinwoo seemed to genuinely want input from his crew. Why do you ask them? Corvin finally questioned one day. You are the pack leader. Your word should be law. Jinwoo looked puzzled. Because they might see something I missed. 5 minds are better than 1, don't you think? But what if they disagree with you? Then we talk about it until we find a solution that works for everyone, Jinwoo said simply. That's how you build trust. Trust. Another concept that didn't translate well into Thrakari. In Corvin's language, the closest word meant temporary alliance based on mutual benefit. But what he saw aboard the Hope's Dawn went deeper than that. He saw it when Heejin covered extra shifts so Minho could recover from a bout of space sickness. He saw it when So Young shared her personal chocolate rations with everyone when they found a particularly challenging wreck. He saw it when Hyun-Soo worked through the night to fix a critical system failure, refusing help because he knew that others needed their rest. You give without expecting return, Corvin observed one evening as they shared dinner in the ship's small galley. This is not logical. Maybe not, So Young said, passing him a specially prepared meal that wouldn't conflict with his alien digestive system, but it feels right. Feelings. Corvin said the word like it tasted strange. Thrakari are taught to ignore feelings. They make you weak, make you hesitate in battle. Do they? Hyejin asked. Or do they make you fight harder when you're protecting someone you care about? The question stuck with Corvin long after dinner ended. In his culture, warriors fought for honor, for glory, for the strength of the empire. But as he watched these humans, he began to see a different kind of motivation. He saw it in the way Jinwoo's jaw tightened when they received distress signals from other ships. He saw it in how So Young's hands trembled with suppressed anger when they found evidence of pirates attacking civilian vessels. He saw it in the careful way Hyun-Soo maintained their weapon systems, not out of love for violence, but from a desire to protect his crewmates. Tell me about your species, Corvin said one day, as he helped Minho organize their translation database. His massive fingers were surprisingly gentle with the delicate equipment. What do you want to know? Minho asked. How did you survive? When the galaxy first discovered humans, Everyone thought you were too weak to last a decade in space. Yet here you are, decades later, still thriving. Minho was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. We survive because we adapt, not just to new environments, but to new ideas. We learn from everyone we meet, even from your enemies, especially from our enemies, Minho said with a grin. They teach us what we need to improve. This was revolutionary thinking to Corvin. Thrakari learned from the strong by defeating them in combat. But humans seem to learn from everyone, friend, enemy, or stranger, by simply paying attention and asking questions. Is that why you saved me? Corvin asked. To learn from me? Minho shook his head. We saved you because you needed help. Everything else is just a bonus. That night, as the ship's artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate evening, Corvin found himself thinking about his own people. The Thrakari Empire was vast and powerful, built on the principle that might makes right. They conquered worlds, enslaved weaker species, and celebrated the strong while abandoning the weak. But they were also alone. Every relationship was based on dominance and submission. Every alliance was temporary. Every friendship was really just a competition waiting to happen. These humans had shown him something different. They had taken him in when he was at his weakest, cared for him without asking for anything in return, and treated him as family rather than as a tool to be used. For the first time in his life, Corvin began to wonder if everything he'd been taught about strength was wrong. The distress signal came through during the night shift, piercing the quiet hum of the ship's systems like a scream in the dark. Hyejin was monitoring communications when the transmission crackled to life, filled with static and panic. This is Refugee Convoy 7 Alpha 9, a desperate voice called through the speakers. We are under attack by Nexari raiders. Our escort is down. We have civilians aboard, including children. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. Jinwoo was on the bridge within minutes, still pulling on his jacket. The rest of the crew gathered quickly, their faces grim as they listened to the repeated distress calls, growing weaker with each transmission. Where are they? Jinwoo asked. Studying the navigation display. 2 hours away at maximum burn, Heejin replied, her fingers dancing across her console. But Captain, the signal is getting weaker. I don't think they have 2 hours. Corvin stood in the doorway, his massive frame filling the entrance. Over the past weeks he had grown stronger, his wounds healing thanks to So Young's careful attention. But he was still far from the warrior he had once been. How many raiders? He asked, his voice rumbling through the translation device. Minho, check the communication logs. At least 6 ships, maybe more. They're using Nexari hunter-killer tactics, fast, brutal, designed to overwhelm merchant vessels before help can arrive. And us? Corvin looked around at the crew. How many weapons do we have? An uncomfortable silence fell over the bridge. The Hope's Dawn was a salvage vessel, not a warship. Their weapons consisted of cutting lasers for breaking apart wreckage and a single defensive cannon that hadn't been fired in years. We're outgunned about 20-1, Yunsu said quietly. Those raiders have military-grade weapons and armor. Then we don't go, Corvin said, expecting agreement. In Thrakari culture, you didn't enter battles you couldn't win. It was simple, logic. Instead, Jinwoo was already moving toward the pilot's seat. Change course for the convoy. Maximum burn. Captain, Minho said carefully. Corvin's right. This is suicide. Jinwoo stopped and turned to face his crew. Maybe, but those are families out there, children who will die if we don't try. We're not warriors, Hyejin protested. We're salvage workers. Today we're whatever those people need us to be, Jinwoo replied firmly. Anyone who doesn't want to be part of this can take an escape pod. No judgment, no shame. But I'm going. 1. By 1, the crew members moved to their stations. So Young began preparing the medical bay for casualties. Hyun-Soo started rerouting power to their pathetic weapon systems. Minho opened communications channels to coordinate with any other ships that might respond. Corvin watched in amazement as they transformed their peaceful salvage ship into something resembling a rescue vessel. These humans were about to throw themselves into a battle they couldn't win, against an enemy that outnumbered them to save people they had never met. "This is insane," he said to So Young as she checked their medical supplies. "Probably," she agreed, not looking up from her work. "But it's also right." "Right?" Corvin struggled with the concept. "How can it be right to throw away your lives?" So Young finally looked at him, her eyes steady. "Because some things are more important than staying alive. Some things are worth dying for." As they approached the battle zone, the scene that greeted them was chaos. The refugee convoy consisted of 3 large transport ships, their hulls scarred by weapons fire. Around them, like sharks circling wounded prey, 6 sleek Nexari raiders darted in and out, firing at will. "One of the transports is venting atmosphere," Haijin reported. "They're trying to evacuate to the other ships. Raiders are focusing on the escape pods," Minho added, his voice tight with anger. "They're hunting civilians." Jinwoo's hands tightened on the controls. "Hyun-soo, how creative can you get with our mining equipment?" "Pretty creative," the engineer replied grimly. "Give me 5 minutes." What followed was the most desperate improvisation Corvin had ever witnessed. Hyun-soo jury-rigged their cargo, handling systems to launch debris like missiles. So Young used their medical scanner to identify weak points in the raider ship's armor. Minho coordinated with the surviving convoy escorts to create a distraction, but it was Hyejin who came up with the plan that might actually work. "The raiders are using standard attack patterns," she explained rapidly. "They're overconfident because they think we're just another merchant ship. If we can make them think we're running away, we can lead them into the asteroid field." "And then what?" Corvin asked. "Then we use our mining charges to bring down some rocks on their heads," Hyun-soo said with a grim smile. It was a plan that relied entirely on timing, luck, and the raiders' own arrogance. By every military standard Corvin knew, it was doomed to fail. But as he watched the crew execute their desperate gambit, as he saw them risk everything for people they had never met, Corvin finally understood what true strength looked like. It wasn't the ability to defeat your enemies. It was the courage to stand up for what was right, even when you knew you might not survive to see the outcome. When the first raider ship moved to intercept them, Corvin made his choice. He moved to the weapons console, his massive hands surprisingly gentle on the human-sized controls. For the first time in his life, he was going to fight not for conquest or glory, but for something far more precious: the lives of innocent people in the family that had saved him. The battle that followed changed everything Corvin thought he knew about warfare. Instead of the brutal frontal assault he expected, the crew of the Hope's Dawn fought like no warriors he had ever seen. They used cunning instead of strength, cooperation instead of dominance, and sacrifice instead of self-preservation. Jin Woo piloted their ship through the asteroid field with impossible precision, threading between rocks while Nexari raiders struggled to follow. Hyun-soo timed the explosive charges perfectly, bringing down chunks of asteroid onto pursuing enemy ships. But it was what happened next that truly opened Corvin's eyes. When one of the refugee transports lost power and began drifting toward a massive asteroid, Jinwoo didn't hesitate. He flew the Hope's Dawn directly into the path of 2 raider ships, using their own vessel as a shield, while the transport's engines came back online. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," Hyejin called out as their ship shook under enemy fire. "Just a few more seconds," Jinwoo replied through gritted teeth, wrestling with the controls as their ship absorbed hit after hit. Corvin watched in amazement as every crew member put the mission above their own safety. So Young left her protected, medical bay to help coordinate rescue efforts. Minho exposed himself to enemy fire while maintaining communications with the convoy. Hyun-soo worked frantically to keep their damaged systems running, even as sparks flew around him. When the battle finally ended, 3 raider ships were destroyed and the others had fled. The refugee convoy was safe, but the Hope's Dawn was barely holding together. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the ship, and the air recycling system made worrying noises. As they helped transfer wounded refugees to the surviving escort ships, Corvin found himself working alongside the crew without being asked. His massive strength made him invaluable for moving heavy equipment and carrying injured people to safety. "Thank you," an elderly human refugee said to him as he gently lifted her onto a stretcher. "I never thought I'd be grateful to see a Thrakari, but you saved my granddaughter's life." The words hit Corvin harder than any weapon ever had. Throughout his warrior training, he had been taught that gratitude was something you extracted from the weak through fear. But this woman's thanks came freely, given not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Later, as the convoy departed safely and the Hope's Dawn limped toward the nearest repair station, Corvin sat alone in the cargo bay that had been his home for the past months. The events of the day played over and over in his mind, forcing him to confront truths he had spent his entire life avoiding. His people called themselves warriors, but what had they ever really fought for? Conquest, yes. Glory, certainly. But had they ever fought to protect the innocent? Had they ever risked their lives for strangers who could offer nothing in return? The answer shamed him. "You look like someone who's wrestling with big thoughts," So Young said, joining him in the cargo bay. Her medical coat was stained with blood from treating the wounded, but her eyes were bright with satisfaction. "I have been thinking about my people," Corvin said slowly. "About what it truly means to be strong. And what conclusion did you reach?" Corvin was quiet for a long moment, searching for words in a language that had no terms for what he was feeling. "I think we have been weak for a very long time. We confused cruelty with strength, abandoned mercy as if it were disease, and called our fear of compassion wisdom." So Young nodded. "It takes courage to question everything you've been taught. Your species," Corvin continued, "you were dismissed by the galaxy as too soft to survive in space. Yet you have become something my people never managed to be." "What's that?" "Heroes." The word hung in the air between them. In all his years as a Thrakari warrior, Corvin had never used that term to describe anyone. Heroes were legends, stories told to younglings. But watching Jinwoo risk everything for strangers, seeing Hyunsu work through pain to save others, witnessing the entire crew choose sacrifice over safety, what else could you call them? 3 days later, Corvin made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Using the ship's long-range communications array, he sent a message to the Thrakari High Command. But instead of begging for forgiveness or pleading for reinstatement, he did something unprecedented. He challenged the very foundation of their society. "I am Corvin, son of Thraktal, formerly of the Battle Caste," his message began. "I speak to you now not as a failure seeking redemption, but as a warrior who has discovered what true strength means." His words spread like wildfire through Thrakari space. Young warriors, tired of the endless cycle of violence and abandonment, began questioning the old ways. Some called him a traitor, others a visionary. The Empire began to fracture along ideological lines, but Corvin was no longer concerned with the Empire's opinion. He had found something far more valuable than their approval. He had found a family. When the Hope's Dawn reached the repair station, Jinwoo made an offer that changed Corvin's life forever. "We've been thinking," the captain said as they watched technicians patch their battle-damaged hull. "Our salvage operation could use someone with your skills, not as a weapon, but as a partner. Equal share of profits, equal voice in decisions." "You would trust me with such responsibility?" Corvin asked. "You've already proven yourself," Yijin said. "Not as a warrior, but as family." Family. The word resonated in Corvin's chest like a bell. In Thrakari culture, blood determined family, and even blood ties were easily broken by displays of weakness. But these humans offered him something his own people never had: unconditional acceptance. As the Hope's Dawn prepared to leave the repair station, heading toward new adventures and new opportunities to help those in need, Corvin stood on the bridge as a full crew member for the first time. He had traded the armor of a Thrakari warrior for the simple coveralls of a salvage worker, and he had never felt stronger. The galaxy would remember this day as the beginning of the Great Thrakari Reformation, when half an empire turned away from conquest to embrace compassion. But for Corvin, it was simpler than that.